Hello friends, welcome back to Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So today I have brought you here to do another garden tour, but instead of starting in the garden this time, where I'm actually starting it up here by my greenhouse slash potting shed, whatever you want to call it. And I thought I would start you here so I could show you my green stalks. I didn't show you that last time. In the first garden tour of the season. So last year I grew all sorts of like herbs and stuff like that in the green stalks, and this year I planted mostly flowers. And I did that because right behind where you're standing, or where you are visually, is my kitchen, and I like the idea of being able to look out the big glass door and see all the pretty flowers, all the pretty things. And so I filled the green stalks with mostly flowers, not totally flowers, but a lot of them. There is, on the very bottom, there's basils and mints and things like that, some oregano, because I knew that the very bottom tiers would be things that the chickens would have access to. And so I wanted it to be something that would grow prolifically, but also be good for the chickens if they decided to munch on it. And so there's basils, oregano, peppermint, I think even some spearmint in there. Plus, those things are kind of perennial and they'll kind of go crazy in a container. And so if they're just in the bottom container, they can just keep on coming back every year. But we've got some coleus, just some petunias, marigolds, all different things, different varieties of flowers. And we've also got some strawberries here and there in the different pockets. And so I just thought I would give you a quick look at that. All right, y'all, so looking down towards the garden, I just wanted to kind of stop here for just a moment and mention this gigantic oak tree that we had chopped down last year, that right there. So this week we started working on getting all of the big branches out of there, getting them kind of stacked up and out of the way, and then the next big thing will be to get the chainsaw going and chop all these giant pieces up so that we can get them moved, because eventually the garden fence is going to extend. Right there's the corner of it. It's going to extend up this way and fill in all of this space with more beds and everything. And you can see right over there where we were kind of stacking up some of the bigger logs that we can chop up into firewood for the wood stove. And all of that. So bit by bit, this garden will expand and get as big as I can possibly make it. All right, so I've done a few things in the garden this week, in addition to, us working on beginning to clear out that giant oak that's laying there. We had the power company came through last year, and we're taking down trees and limbs and doing all the cleanup stuff that they have to do. And they mentioned wanting to trim back some of the branches over the power lines that run to our house. And I asked them very politely if they would take down that giant oak tree that's kind of leaning toward the power lines a little bit, and it'd be great if you could take that down. So they did, but they left all of the big branches and the logs laying there for us because it is oak and we knew we could use it for firewood. So of course, the pieces they left were a little bit bigger than we had anticipated needing to contend with, but we'll figure it out. But like I said, in addition to beginning to clear that out, I have done a few other things. So I got in the last of the tomatoes and the peppers today. I just had a couple left, and actually the final 4 tomatoes didn't go into my garden. I had 4 left. I had nowhere else to put anything, and I'm like, well, I'm going to have to get out some more of those grow bags. And I just so happened to meet some neighbors who live on our road. They moved in not too long ago, hadn't met them yet, and they stopped to talk to me about chickens because they saw the chickens wandering around out here, and over the course of the conversation found out she was just starting, the lady was just starting to plant some things. I'm like, you want some tomato starts? So I gave them my last 4 tomato starts. So, but everything else now at this point that I had started from seed has been planted. Everything that was up there in the greenhouse. But let's take a walk through the garden and I'll show you what we got going on. Y'all might remember this guy who greeted us every time we went into the garden in Alabama. And here he is in the Arkansas garden. All right. So right over here, right by the giant oak logs, I didn't mention this the last garden tour, but I've got some echinacea, purple coneflower, that I put in here last year, and I have a butterfly bush for, of course, the pollinators. This hasn't started flowering yet, of course. It'll flower a little bit later on in the season. This is just some sort of wildflower. I haven't even looked to see what that is. And I don't know if it shows up on camera, but all of the flowers are like a lavender color. Very pretty. It's fine. I don't care where that goes as long as it stays out of the garden beds. All right, so we're going to start with the cinder block bed this time around. I did mention last time that I needed to tie up all of this asparagus that was just flopped over all over the place, and so that is exactly what I did. Stuck a big old stick in there and just some garden stakes and some twine. Tied them all up so that I could get in here and actually see everything, have access to everything here in the raised bed. I had someone comment that it looked like there was cutworms in the onions, but I think they were talking about the tops because I had just trimmed them back. Something that I have learned is that it is good to occasionally trim back the tops of the onions a little bit because it encourages them to grow more. Again, onion is one of the things I struggle with, so I do know this week I need to come out and start easing the soil away from the onions themselves to kind of give them a little breathing room. So that is something I need to do this week. And as you can see, I've also mulched the beds. So we have someone who lives here on our road who grows hay. And he brought us a bale of hay several months ago for Sophie and Amos. He had sold the whole field basically, and when they came to get the hay, they didn't get one of them, and they didn't want to come back just for one, and so the neighbor gave it to us. And Sophie and Amos honestly don't care for it because they're spoiled with their fancy hay. And so I talked to them when they brought it, and I asked them, do you spray anything on your hay? And the guy kind of made a face. He's like, no. So I knew that this would be safe to mulch my garden with. It was really a struggle last year because I tried mulching everything with leaves, which worked for the most part, but hay or straw is going to work way better. And so that is what we did. It's much easier to work with. And I say we, but it's I. That's what I did. Oh, and something else that I did. Now, y'all, I have never done this before, and it gave me such anxiety to do this, but I'm trusting the process because I've seen a lot of people get excellent results about this or by doing this, and hopefully I did it right. Topping off pepper plants. So, cutting off the top of the plant is supposed to encourage the plant to actually become very, very bushy. And so I chopped off the very tops of, not all, but just a few of my pepper plants just as an experiment this year. I will say that after I chopped off the top of this one, all of these little, almost like suckers for a tomato plant, started shooting up. And so I'm hoping it'll work. Hopefully it'll do good. Hi Nubs. Did you come to go exploring? See what you can find in here? Don't eat the lizard I found earlier. He's my garden friend. Alright, but in this bed, of course, you can see all of the onions back there. And I have the bigger pepper plants. Those are the poblano ancho peppers that I topped off. But then I've got a whole bunch more little baby pepper plants, all in this bed. Coming down here, this bed is primarily tomatoes. We've got the variety of tomatoes back in there. We've got herbs all in the front. We've got basil, lavender, marjoram. We've got some purple sage. You can kind of see that purpley color there. We've got some oregano. We've got the magnolia tendril peas that my granddaughter planted here. You can see a whole cluster of them coming up. And, you know, we've got the blossoms there. Swinging around this way. What are you doing, Nebsy? Hi, buddy. All right, so I mentioned last video, the last tour, that I was trying to remember some of the things that I had planted, and I had to look at my photos I had taken. So this was the rampicante squash. And you can see I did thin it out a little bit, as painful as that was to do. I cut it way back, more than half I took out of here. And so now we've got the true leaves starting up. Those are doing pretty well. Oh, we've got some more stragglers trying to come out there too. So I'll have to pull that one too. And this over here was the loofahs. There's only a handful of these, so no need to thin these out. But they're doing all right. I see what looks like the beginnings of the true leaves right there. And I've still got to work on the walkways, lining these with the ground cover stuff. I ordered a butane torch to cut this stuff with, because if you can cut it with a butane torch, it's going to melt and not fray. And you'll have a nice clean edge. And so that's why I have not yet done it. I got the butane torch in the mail, but I don't have any butane, and I keep forgetting to get it at the store. But we will do that maybe tomorrow. But everything is, for the most part, it's doing really well. I do have a little bit of flea beetles that showed up in the garden. And so that has not been pleasant to see. But otherwise, everything's looking really good so far. And I did look at my photos to see what I had planted on all of these trellises. And I labeled them. So this one right here is Muncher cucumbers. And there's a whole lot of them right there. I'm going to try and carefully pull out the excess and move it to a different spot, because over on this side, along this trellis, I planted the python beans, but I have not had a single one show up. So if I can carefully pull out some of these baby ones, these cucumbers over here, then I can just move them to here and utilize them there on that trellis. I hate wasting seedlings when they're coming up. I always feel so bad. All right, we've got the NT half runner green beans over here in this long row on the trellis, and they're starting to climb up the trellis there. This bed over here is again primarily tomatoes. On this trellis right here, these are Chinese noodle beans and a sunflower, randomly. But Chinese noodle beans is what will be going up this trellis. And something else that I did today was I had a great big pot full of comfrey stars that I thought I had killed them last year. I just never got around to planting them, but they came back. It is really hard to kill comfrey. And so I took all of those little baby plants and I planted them today on the end of every bed over here. And so these will provide those great big beautiful nutrient rich leaves as these grow that I can turn into fertilizer. And they won't take up any space in my beds because they're right there on the outside. Again, there's that plantain that I'm just letting it be happy in the garden because it's medicinal and wonderful. Over here, I forgot to mention this one last week. So this is just a bed full of flowers that my granddaughter helped plant. Just a variety. It was just a mixed, mixed wildflowers, or maybe a pollinator blend or something like that. So it's just all sorts of flowers, including a gazillion great big sunflowers. So I've already thinned out some of these flowers. And I see some areas where I'm probably going to have to do some more, like this down in here is really crowded. I think I see some calendula, looks like some marigolds. I don't know what all was in that mix that the grandbaby had. What are you doing, Hubsy? Oh, something smells good, I guess. And then over here, I didn't mention these, I don't think, were the bee balm, also called Melissa officialis, something like that. Melissa, medicinal plant, makes these beautiful flowers on top that remind me of Animal from the Muppets, and just excellent for pollinators. And I've also been seeing a lot of ladybugs in the garden already. Oops, sorry, ladybug. I've seen a lot of ladybugs in here today, so I'm always happy to see that. We've got more comfrey coming up over there where I had planted it along the fence. So this is, I guess, a yucca plant. This was here when we moved in. I have not planted any of these. There's a couple of these around the property here and there. I just kind of give it its space. Those leaves are pokey. And I don't remember if it flowered last year or not, to be honest. I can see some new growth popping up in the middle. So I don't know, maybe it'll flower. And we've got all of the elderberries. These ones are really starting to take off. This one's about 4 feet tall now. I have some lilacs that I planted down here. And again, when we expand, all of this fencing will push back. We'll go down there a little bit closer to the creek and give me a little bit more space, so that at some point I would like to build a little bitty tool shed down here for the garden, just to keep my garden stuff down here. This is the good soil. I talked about this last week, that I much prefer to use for starting things. The grapes, the muscadine grapes, are really taking off. I'm surprised how quickly these grapes are growing. Very happy with what I'm seeing, and I can't believe, I'm still shocked to see all of these baby grape clusters. I do not expect to actually get grapes this year, but it's wild to me that I'm already seeing these clusters on both of these, on both sides. You can see the aftermath of me doing some planting out here today. I haven't cleaned it up yet, as you can see. But Mr. Smith did come out here and cleaned up that jungle that I had here last video. This is the stump of that giant multi-trunked oak that we had cut down to give me way more light in the garden. And it's growing back tons and tons of shoots. It's still trying to grow. I mentioned last week that I was going to be adding a second shade trellis. So as you can see, I got that up. I have all of the rest of the tomatoes planted in here. These buckets over here, these were my son and daughter-in-law's buckets of cantaloupes and pumpkins, so that if they want, the pumpkins can go that way across the ground, and if they are willing to give it a try, they can do the cantaloupe up the trellis. but that's their prerogative. This tub right here was actually for the goats, for their water, but we stopped using it. It really wasn't big enough. I wanted something bigger. So I grabbed my drill, I grabbed a bit that could go through metal, put in some drain holes, and brought this out here to grow some peppers. Peppers love company, so it's nice to plant them with other peppers. And so I threw 4 of them in this. Over here on that side, those are all those grow pots with more peppers, but I wasn't too sure that I could fit multiple pepper plants in those bags because they're kind of on the smaller side, and so I just put 1 in each. That again is my compost bed over there, although my granddaughter came out here and planted a whole bunch of things while I was planting. So here and there's some random tomato plants. There's some zucchini right there, and there's flowers that she just kind of planted. So I have a tool I mentioned where I turn the soil for this thing. I'll just try to avoid the growing things, and you know, if they live, they can be her plants. Zucchini, speaking of the zucchini, I replanted this bed, added some nutrients to the soil, and all of that. So they just went in today. They're still struggling with a little bit of transplant shock, but they're starting to perk back up. They were laid down completely flat earlier today, but they're perking back up, and hopefully they do well. I, fed the soil, put some organic starter fertilizer in there, mixed it all in, and so hopefully they'll do better. These were the other 2 zucchini plants that I had planted. They were doing terrible, but as you can see, all of that new growth is looking nice and green and healthy. So I think we're doing a lot better there. And then we're just kind of back around here to all of the main beds again. And I have lots of tomato plants in here, different varieties. This one over here was actually a start that I picked up from Mr. Smith. I think I mentioned that last week. These were called Super Sweet 100s. Little bitty cherry tomatoes. They were, well, super sweet. Mr. Smith loved them. So I grabbed one of those for him. This is pretty much it. Everything is generally planted now. Like I said, I'll probably start a few more things here and there. Maybe some more cucumbers. Well, in particular over there where the peas were, and I think we skipped that bed, so let's walk back over there. Ignore my mess. I've got to clean up. I've got my post-planting cleanup to do. All right, but the peas. So these peas, they don't like extreme heat. So as it gets hot, these will get too hot to produce. And when they do, I'll pull them out and I'll start some more cucumbers in this bed. But these are starting to produce blossoms left and right. They're doing very well. And just today, I picked my very first pea pod off of these, and it was so delicious. Oh, these magnolia tendril peas are just so yummy. And you can see there's another little bitty baby pea pod starting to grow right there. They're just a great little sweet and crunchy snack right here where I'm coming into the garden. I love it. And the flowers are just so cheerful. Oh, and I just saw another little ladybug. Gardener's best friend. All right, you guys. So there is my quick little tour of the garden this week. You can see what has changed. What has gone in that wasn't in last week, what has gone up that wasn't up last week, and all of those tomatoes in those grow pots, And peppers are doing really well. We'll see how it goes as the heat progresses this summer, and we'll see how they, how they fare. But so far, they're doing great. The plants just took off as soon as I got them out of those little baby pots. Oh, and over there, that wash tub. So we've had that wash tub for years. I actually got it when we lived in Germany. Picked it up on the side of a curb. Someone was tossing it, and we've used it for years. You've probably even seen that exact tub with a bucket in it when I brine my turkey. But something happened to it and the seal broke. The metal broke at the bottom, and it doesn't hold water anymore. So I drilled a few extra holes, filled it with some soil, and turned it into a planter. And that planter is full of flower seeds. Just a variety of some seeds that I had. Of course, I planted a couple more sunflowers. But then I also planted some bachelor's buttons, which are just the most cheerful, beautiful little flowers. I also planted, some zinnias that I had not planted yet. So just a variety of seeds just to add a little bit more color, a little bit more for the pollinators and all of that. And these bags right here, so these are bigger bags. These are 5-gallon grow bags, although I question that that's actually 5 gallons, but it's bigger than the other ones. And so this is where the last of my peppers went. 3 in each because peppers like friends. I put them right here on the very edge of this trellis where they will get lots of afternoon sun because the sun will just come right through here. If I feel like they're not getting enough sun, of course I'll move them. They don't have to stay here. That is kind of the great things about these grow bags. If I feel like something needs to move, it can move. Oh, and I did want to mention this over here. So a very sweet friend of mine gave me a goji berry bush. Well, she gave me 2. The chickens destroyed one of them before I could get it away from them. And I had set this in a fenced-in area up by the house where I have blueberries growing. And I picked it up to bring it down here to the garden so I could give it a spot to grow permanently. And the roots had grown through the bottom of the pot into the soil up there. And I thought for sure I had absolutely killed this. But it looks like it's popping back up. So I don't think I killed it. Oh my goodness, I felt so bad. It is so stressful to me for when someone gives me a plant and it dies. It just breaks my heart and I feel so awful. Now some of it doesn't look good, but this is starting to perk back up. So I'm going to get this out of this little pot and put it in some good soil in its own spot. And then hopefully it'll just take off. And speaking of when people give me things, I also have 2 baby trees up there that were given to me when I went on that trip up to Jasper. And y'all, those ones, oh gosh, I'm gonna baby these so much. But I will tell you about those in the next video. All right, y'all, so that is it. That is this week's garden tour. I mentioned last week in the first tour that I'm going to try and do these every week, and I will. Now, there may be some weeks where I miss if the weather doesn't cooperate or something like that, but I will try to bring y'all through here every week and let you see how things are coming along and what's doing well, what isn't doing well, and like, did I kill the pepper plants? Or the onions. Did I actually get any onions this time around? Oh, this shade cloth here. This is the bed that I had the lettuce in early in the year, but we had this incredibly early heat wave and it was crazy hot. So I tried to shade the lettuce with the cloth here to kind of protect it from the heat, to keep it from bolting and getting bitter so fast. It didn't work. That lettuce got super bitter. It was not even edible. Even the goats wouldn't touch it and the ducks wouldn't touch it. Nobody would eat it. It was so bad. So it ended up getting buried in the compost bed over there. So we can feed the worms and everything else and feed the soil. So, something doesn't turn out, use it for something else. So that is it for today, friends. Thanks for joining me out here again at the homestead. My name is Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. God bless, and I'll talk to y'all next time.